What would happen if you found out that the only real fight you have in this lifetime is with yourself? Let's talk about that. Welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast. My name is Daryl Dittmer. Today's guest is someone who truly embodies resilience, purpose, and creativity. Michael Burt is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, actor, and the voice behind the ThriveWell Journey podcast, which is a show focused on helping people move from just surviving to truly thriving in every area of life, physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially. Michael's journey hasn't been easy. He's faced serious health challenges, including a kidney transplant and a battle with squamous cell carcinoma. But instead of giving up, he used those experiences to fuel his purpose and create a life that inspires others. Whether he's speaking, building businesses, or encouraging others through his story, Michael brings depth, honesty, and a belief that we're all here for something greater. Michael, thanks so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man. Daryl, first of all, thank you. This is, I think you know, but this is me in the podcast world as a guest for the first time.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
As I'm a host, right? And then that's what I'm used to. Yeah. And when you offered me the opportunity to come here as a guest and just be on your podcast, I was a definite yes. But in the back, I was like, nah, I'm good. But you were such a great guest, and I was honored by your request, and that made it a definite yes. And
thank you.
So
thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I loved being on your podcast, which is why, I just felt like I've got to get Michael on my podcast, because I just think we knocked it around in a wonderful way. And, and I know you have a story, and, we all have, how did we get here sort of thing, right? The journey and how did we get to the podcast life, and how did we get to where we are? And anytime I see somebody, and I don't see it often, but when somebody, refers to their life as from just surviving to truly thriving in every area of life, physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially, it sparks me. That sparks me because I don't think we talk about it enough in terms of holistically looking at our lives and what it takes to thrive. So if you don't mind, I'd love you to just sort of share your journey and what brings you to that way of looking at life.
Man, we got what, 3 hours?
Right? As much as you want, man. We'll just go.
In the intro, right? Like, resilience is like in my DNA. I would always, hear my brother talk about how, there was some kind of force against me, so to speak, because when I was first born, I was born on January 31st, 1977, within I think it was like a thunderstorm in Flint, Michigan. And crazy external situations, but then with my mom having me, somehow I was in critical condition when I was born. You wouldn't think of it now because of who I am, but what I've been through ever since that time that I didn't know about. It's been fight after fight after fight, and it started with that, and then in other situations, like as I got older, things seemed to flow, right? Things seemed to flow. I kind of found my space in life, like in my youth, but I struggled with my mom with, she was always moving around. So I never had a stable location. Had many homes, but not houses, but never a home. And I think that kind of was with me throughout my life. And what also stuck with me was, because of that, was struggle. So I struggled a lot with a lot of things. And from the struggle mentally and things like that, there are physical struggles. And we talked about this squamous cell carcinoma. This is later in life, the kidney transplant. I just had a lot of struggle. But I had to make a decision and a choice to say, I don't want to live that life, for the rest of my life. And I just made some different choices in the way who I was being and the choices that I was making in life. And, all those things made me who I am. But to continue to live in a life of struggle, I just chose not to do it anymore. And I mean, we can get detail if you want details of all sorts of certain stories. I could do that, but just as an overview, what brought me to the mindset, I wouldn't even say call it a mindset, the way of being in the world of survive or thriving, as opposed to the way of being in the world of survival. It was just a choice, and I think it's a conscious choice to say, I want to thrive, or I am being thriving, instead of I am being survival. And it's just a choice that I said I'm going to take.
I couldn't agree more. And there's so many ways to frame that. And my story, which, involves addiction and dysfunction and just crazy stuff and bad decisions and choices, right? Like the things that I decided to do. Now, it's interesting because when I was younger, I didn't really look at it like I was deciding to do these things. I was doing them because everybody else was doing it. And, oh, let's go do this. Let's go do that. Let's go wreck this. Let's go, do that drug or whatever it is. But it was choices, regardless of the age. And then as we continue to make those choices, I think we all come to a place where it's like, there's a crossroads. There's always a crossroads, right? Like what am I going to do from here? And it sounds like you've come to that crossroad in many, many ways, many times throughout life, as I have. Like there's times when I have to decide to do things differently because what I've been doing isn't really working. And the other word that it brings up is responsibility, but we'll talk about that in a second. But those choices, I think, are absolutely crucial. And sometimes they're not as honored in our lives as I think they could be, to choose something different or to choose a different path.
Yeah. For me, it was, I think the thing, the precipice of the change was when my mom passed away. She was like an anchor for me. I didn't really realize that until she passed away in 2003, and I didn't know how to take it in and be with it. I think during her funeral, I was mad, right? I went to the bathroom of the church and just kind of sat in the corner. It was a bench, sat in the corner, and I just didn't want to be around people. I was mad. I was mad because she left me, and I didn't know how to internalize all that stuff and really be with the moment that she had passed away. So when she passed away, I was living in Georgia, where I am now, but I was living in Atlanta, and I was around 23 years old. And so I was around 23-year-old people, and they weren't the best. Right. They
Yeah.
were making choices with drugs and everything like that too. And then in that space is where I experimented for a little bit. And it gave me some kind of relief temporarily. And I was okay going down that road until I was like, you know, my mom wouldn't like this. But I never chose to um, be okay with the fact that she passed. So I struggled with that for years, years and years and years, until I did some, self-development and things like that. And when I chose to do the self-development, I got to see myself. I got to see why I made the choices I made. And it really allowed me to just be with myself. And I think during those times when I was with that group of people, I wasn't being with myself. You know, I was being with the pain that I chose to take on without, not really wanting to deal with what actually happened. And when I chose to get into some kind of, self-development, and because that stuff wasn't working, I said, you know what, I'm better than this. I'm stronger than this. I don't want to struggle like this. So that's when I started my self-development. But at that time, I had left Georgia and I was in Los Angeles at the time. So it was a real journey. It was a real journey. And I was so glad I was able to really reflect on who I am and what happened, so that I could make that shift and change.
Yeah, I feel like, when I went through drug treatment, all that sort of thing, it was impressed upon me that you change the game, you got to change the players. When you shift things and you have to shift the game. We have to shift who we're with. And it sounds like that move to California helped you significantly in terms of just maybe a new space, right? A new place to look at things differently and potentially understand things differently, which I think is a really cool thing. And I don't think the universe works, however we want to refer to it, a God, universe, source, or whatever that is for anybody. And however anybody refers to that. But I do feel like, for me, there's a power there that kind of helps me along a little bit, like, hey, man, banging on my hood, like,
Right.
dude, maybe you need to do things differently, and and because I can choose either run away, right? And I think that's what happens with the drugs or whatever it is, food or gambling or whatever, people choose to run away. And then what you talked about as far as being with it, being with the pain and feeling it fully and allowing it to sort of move through us. And my mom passed away in 2001, and I was 35 at the time. And I didn't really think about it. 23 is very young to lose your mom.
Yeah.
And 35 is young to lose your mom. But that's gigantic stuff. My mom was an anchor for me too. And exactly like you said, oh, Michael, I didn't realize it
Right.
like I do now. And I would there'd be times when I would just sob, but then there would also be times when I would put this hard shell around myself and not want to feel it anymore,
Right.
and hold it away from me instead of bringing it into me. And that sounds like what you were describing. Was that accurate?
Yeah. What I know now is that we get to choose the way of who we want to be, right? We get to choose these ways. When the way of, you know, staying out all night, clubbing, partying, all that stuff, when it didn't serve me anymore, meaning like I saw myself in the future being this wonderful person that's actually serving people and helping people. That way of being didn't serve me anymore. And so, like in that internal compass, it was like, okay, well, there's some shifting that you have to that you have to do. And I think for me, it started inside. When it started inside, other things started to shift. The people started to shift. The environment started to shift. The things that I was doing, my actions started to shift. Now, granted, those things are shifting, but the work was hella hard. You know what I mean? There's work that had to be done. And I think because my resilience, because I'm okay with doing the hard thing, I've forged forward. And I didn't know that I was in this world of survival, just surviving for the next day. You know, parts of it was fun. You know, I was young, and I was okay. And parts of it was not okay. Like it was hard on the body, right? And of course, when people are young, you know, they just think, you know, we'll live forever and it won't affect us until it does. But you know, the world of survival was no longer what I wanted for my life, because when I look back when I was younger, about 14, or probably even younger than that, my first experience of kind of the good life kind of thing, I was not shipped to, I shouldn't say it that way, but my brother was in the Army, and my mom was like, you need some experience in life, get on the plane. I'm like this 13, 14-year-old kid on a plane, American Airlines, I think it was, going to Germany by myself.
Wow.
Yeah. And that moment, like I look back at that time, I'm like, man, it served me to, you know, go to Germany for, I think maybe it was, I can't remember, 4 months or something like that, as like a adolescent. Those moments like that. Then I was a track athlete as well, and I was sent to Europe and competed in Europe, you know, Germany again, Austria, Switzerland, all these different places. And so I knew from those moments how life could be great. I didn't know about the world of thriving, you know what I mean? But I just knew that I was doing what I was meant to do. And then, you know, again, life happens, and then my mom passes away, and then I'm in this other world that was really juxtaposed to who I thought I was. And when I got past that space of just, you know, in the world of survival, and start opening up to like, you know, hey, this ain't serving me. I think those moments really spoke to the future me, who I was being, to choose to start being thriving. And I mean, the journey was crazy though, man. It's crazy.
Well, I love the term being thriving, because if I'm not being thriving, then I'm not thriving, right? I'm thinking about thriving. I'm wondering about thriving. But there's a huge difference in the steps between what I want to do and what maybe I even decide to do versus what I actually do. And I love that you're hitting on that. It reminds me of a Ralph Waldo Emerson, a little quote that I love to share. But what you are speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you say. And I love that because that separates the being from the thinking about it and the actuality, and actualizing, because I'm a big believer, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. But I think everybody wants, good relationships. Everybody wants some kind of happiness or contentment. Everybody wants some kind of meaning or purpose. Everybody wants some kind of financial security. But how many people actually go through the steps to get to those things, right? And it's very familiar for me. It was very familiar to stay maybe in places where people weren't looking to being thriving. And so how do I get from, and I'm not saying, anybody is better or worse or whatever. It's just, some people decide to do things differently and many don't. Have you found that on your journey as well?
Yeah, I don't know what it is for people, but so here's what I think what happens with people. They get to a certain point. It's like the rock bottom kind of thing. You're under the basement. And then it's like a choice has to be made. I don't want to be this way anymore because I'm still looking down from the ground up. You know what I mean? I'll just say for me, I just know that if let's say finances, if I want to be, or just say health, if I want to be healthy, I can talk about it all day long, but then I go and eat, a gallon ice cream or 5 slices of pizza, and then say, "Oh, I want to be healthy." You know what I mean? And it's the actions that really fall in line from who you're actually being. And that's why I say being thriving. It's like a distinction that I created for myself that falls in line with, who I'm being in the world, especially with the podcast and business and all that kind of stuff. And it's not like a choice that I'm making. Well, I made a choice, right? I made the choice, but then I just live the choice. And I think what happens with people is like sometimes when we get so used to our old way of being, that it continues to just kind of live. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way that it is. And until you make the true choice, it's like, okay, I want to be healthy. I want to be wealthy. I want to thrive in X, Y, and Z. Like, who do I have to become in order for that world to occur? And as I'm saying all of this out of my mouth, the actions to be this person is not like it happens overnight, right? There's a shift that has to happen in your mind for you to become that thing that you said you're going to become. In other words, I just say with my health, like I know I had to make some shifts with my health, being somebody who lost a kidney too and had a kidney transplant. I can't go out and drink and all this kind of stuff. And by the way, after I had the kidney, like I didn't want to have alcohol anyway. Like I love tequila, I love bourbon. This is a sidebar. I love those things. I wasn't like I wasn't drinking all the time, but it's just those are things I love when I would go out and things like that. But when I got the transplant, like it had to stop. I mean, people can still do it on a transplant, but I chose not to because who I said I was going to be for myself had to show up all the time. So when I'm around family and friends and they're drinking all this kind of stuff, it's like, okay, now I'm good, plus it kind of took the taste away from alcohol, which is cool. And the fact that I say that I want to be a millionaire or multimillionaire, like I had to look at certain things of the way I was being in the world to say, okay, well, I'm spending money, but I don't even look at my bank account. Okay, that's not going to work, or things like that. So I looked at the things that I was doing that wasn't in alignment with who I said that I wanted to become. And then I guess, I don't know, I guess through education, through self-discovery, through putting myself in places that would be in alignment to what I'm saying I'm becoming, I just started to live it. I don't have to think about it. Like when I wake up in the morning, you know, I'm obsessed with my business, So that's in alignment with being, I have to be mentally healthy, physically healthy. I have to make sure I'm, looking at my finances and where things are going. Like it all starts to become just a part of my DNA, I guess you could say. And I think there's a struggle with human beings because it's not the easiest road to go down when you're really calling yourself to be higher. But I can't speak for everybody.
Right. Yeah. No.
Did that answer your question? I don't know.
It does. No,
Okay.
it's great. It's just, there's so much of it where what I love about this stuff is we just kick around thought processes and
Yeah.
philosophies and what works for us. The only thing I can really speak to is what has worked for Daryl or what
Right.
has failed to work for Daryl. And there's
Right.
probably been more stuff that's failed to work for Daryl.
Oh, hey.
Right. And it's all good because it's, those are all the stepping stones that we need to step on to get to a different place. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, the compartments of life and a holistic approach to life. And there's the physical and mental and spiritual and emotional and financial and all those things and relationships and et cetera, et cetera. But they all, the rising tide lifts all boats, right? So if I start doing the things and being the things that I know are going to, the thing is, I know, and I knew a long time ago when I was messing everything up, and
Yeah.
right. There's this little grind inside where there's, it just becomes friction. If I know, but I'm doing something that's that doesn't align with what I know, or I start, not being what I think it could be leading me in the direction that I want to go, that voice gets louder over time, and I think one of the coolest things about faith in whatever somebody has faith in, and God or higher power or universe or source or whatever it is that we're getting the messages, and it's whatever that power is good enough to give us the messages. Our only job is to listen and do things differently. What if we didn't get the messages?
Right.
What if nobody gave us the messages? That little voice that says, I don't know if that's such a great idea.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge favor that we get, and being able to make our decisions and choose different things and align with something where it's like, that really resonates, because we know when it resonates, don't we?
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was just thinking about like, what are those little things that led me along the way to be like, okay, that's not the way to go. Come this way. I've had many of those moments. Did I listen to every one of them? No. But as you were saying, like, they were there. Like, I don't know if it's, my mom's energy, whatever, flying around saying, pushing me, to the right way or whatever. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I don't know what that is. But what I know now, though, is that because I continue to listen to those small voices or whatever it is, I have joy and happiness in life,
Mm.
you know, with still more room to go and grow. But man, I look at who I am now because of those small voices that turns like, that led me to the better, the better environment of my life. Um, I'm so grateful, because I'm living a life now where like I'm mentally engaged, I'm physically engaged with all the things that I'm doing, and I'm in a world where I see a bright future for myself and the people I are connected with. And I do remember when I was not in, I would just as a comparison, light and dark, right? In the world of I can see a future as opposed to the opposite, which is, I'm in this dark world and I can barely see the next step in front of me, but I'm gonna take it anyway, and I know it's not the right way. Um, but those small voices led me out as I listened. Um, and I'm here now to tell a story, to just just be proud of what I've come through. Be proud of who I am now and who I've become and who I'm becoming. And it's just, I don't know, it's a life is a phenomenon. It is a phenomenon, and I can't even act like I could put my finger on it. But what I'm getting is that we continue in the back spaces, in the good spaces, if you want to look at it that way. We get to create what we want. Even when we're in the lower levels of life or whatever, doing drugs and drinking and partying all the time, and that's the world that people are in. It's a choice, and it's it could be wrong for some people, and it could be like this is the way it is for some people. And I'm just glad that those voices led me to where I'm at today.
I'm glad too, man. What I was thinking about when you were saying that, and I don't, or what came through my mind is I rarely, and I don't say it often enough, but I rarely hear someone say, you know what, I'm joyful and my life is joyful. And that's just the coolest thing ever, to be able to say that and to wake up. I liken it to a long time ago when I was pursuing. It's easy to pursue certain compartments to the detriment of others. I have found
Mm.
like
Mhm.
I can go after the financial thing and I can go nuts, and I did it, and I made myself sick, and I've had to work on healing myself in that regard. But I was so focused on that these other things went by the wayside to a large extent, which
Yeah.
were the messages. That was the banging on my hood,
Mhm.
like dude, pull yourself together here,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yes.
that's how it happens, and I think that's a cool thing. But one of the things you mentioned, well, I'll finish that story. So at some point in my uh, evolving, or whatever you want to say, I decided that my idea of success has to expand, and it has to get bigger, and it has to include physical, mental, spiritual, emotional,
Mhm.
in addition to the financial and all that sort of thing. But so I came up with success to me means waking up in the morning with a smile on my face.
Mm.
And exactly what you just said in a little different way, like, hey, I wake up, I'm ready to go, and I want to go. And I'm not, like, I hit the snooze 47 times, like, man, this sucks. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And that's a great way to live. And it brings me joy to hear you say things, like that, because I think that's why we're here. I think we're here to experience the beauty of living, and we get caught up in all the other crap, that detracts from that. So
Hmm.
thank you for sharing that, L. Michael. That was really cool.
Absolutely, man. And you know what? Life life is meant to be lived, right? And and however he end up doing that. But if we just break it down to like the brass tacks, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff, that draws our attention away from just the simplicity of life. Um, and I find myself in that struggle sometimes, like, I want this and this and this, but I also want the simplicity of what life brings.
Hmm.
Um, and the universe will give you some things to make you think, right? Um, for me, it was in a little bitty dog. Like,
Wow.
one of the parts of waking up in the morning is I have, so I've had a couple dogs, and because of moving and things like that, like, they couldn't stay with me and I had to give them to other people. And there was a little loss in my life. I wasn't, I didn't, again, like with my mom, I didn't, internalize all that kind of stuff. Like it meant something to me, right? But I didn't internalize it like, oh God, yeah, they're dogs, right? But no, they were a part of, my life at that time. And I'm now at a place where, I'm finding myself again in the age that I'm at. And the universe will be like, okay, here's something to kind of show you that, you know, life can be beautiful and simple. So this little dog, that's not even the dog, my dog, finds her way to me. It's my great niece's grandniece's niece's dog, but she's not around. She's in another state right now. So the dog is loving me, right? I don't know. I didn't ask for it, but she's like a little joy in my life. You know, she wants to hop on my bed and, sleep on my bed, not hers, but mine. And 5 o'clock every morning is when I get up, right? She trained herself to wake up when I wake up, and she licks on the face. I'm like, okay, go away. But those are like the small joys, you know. That says, life is beautiful. Like, all the stuff we went through, that's something. All the things that we're, trying to grab and create to have, wealth or whatever it is for you or them or whoever's listening or watching. Don't forget the small things. I feel, like having a little tiny dog wake you up in the morning, look on your face. That's a beautiful thing, and it reminds me up. Right, reminds me up. Yeah, it reminds me up every morning, that these are the beautiful things in life. Before I, get my day started, take her out for a walk, enjoy the calmness of the day before it all gets to the hustle and bustle. You know, I wouldn't trade that moment for anything.
I
But
love it, man.
yeah, through all of that, I had to learn that though. All of what I went through, I had to learn that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I think that there's, for me, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I got to go to the dumb stuff
I
before I
wouldn't
get.
say that.
Well, no, I appreciate that, but I have to go to an extreme, or at least that was characterized in my life, that I'd have to go to the most complicated stuff to learn to really appreciate the simple stuff. I'd have to go to
Mm,
the extreme of trying so hard I make myself sick to understand that, you know what, maybe I need to meditate. Maybe I need to do breath work. Maybe I need to quiet this whole thing down, like, so for me, it's been the greatest lessons in my life have been the butt whoopings I've taken because of the things I've chosen to do.
Mm-hmm.
And almost every lesson I've ever gotten in life has been about, to one degree or another, simplify, chill, quiet. You know, it's if adding more noise to life helped, I'd be doing that, you know, because I'm a pretty driven guy.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's not, right? It's not the noise. It's not the madness. It's the, I put this in I write a blog, and I wrote the other day about some of the greatest moments of joy in my life are, and I have a wonderful relationship with my wife and family, and, you know, just all that beautiful stuff. And that's all wonderful, and it really is. And I'm grateful every minute for that. But some of the best moments for me are when I'm in the morning and I'm quiet and I do my daily, you know, practices, which include meditation and breath work. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I'm just sitting in a chair being quiet with my eyes closed, and a breeze comes across me, and I'm there
Mm-hmm.
with that breeze at that moment. And it truly feels like somebody's pulling like a silk sheet over my skin. And it's just the coolest thing. And I'm so taken by those moments when I'm in that moment and I'm present for that moment. And what a gift to be able to feel that
Mm-hmm.
and be with that. And you know, those are the things. That's exactly what I think you're talking about with the little dog, which is just,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
There's so much power in the stillness, the calm, and the quiet. I find. Um, but we get caught up as human beings. We get caught up. But I think when we get too caught up, there's something that will bring us back. You know, at least, like, probably like you, I found that for myself. It's like maybe it's like an internal gasket that's about to blow. It's like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. It's too much going on. Got to
Yeah.
chill for a minute. Got to chill. And I'll tell you, man, I'll shut everything out. Everybody got to go. You know, the business, it'll be there when I get some quiet and stillness. Because in that space, I found there's a lot of power.
There is. And I believe that, you know, I don't know if it's necessarily the reason I do it. I do it because I have that personality where I can just go. And so I have to balance that and temper it a little bit with that quiet. And you mentioned, you know, there being power in that, which I 100% agree with. And I think the power comes because, and I don't mean power over anyone or anything like that. I
Right.
just mean there's an internal fortitude and this intestinal fortitude that emanates because I've taken that time, and it allows me to move through difficulties and not get, you know, too far off my center. It allows me to take on the next risk or take on the next challenge, or, you know, I feel like that quiet reverberates
Mm-hmm.
through the rest of my life. And I think that's where that power comes from.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And for me, it's needed for the fulfillment of who I'm becoming. Those moments are so needed. And it's almost like a refilling tank in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It is. I think it's I think it's where we come from. We don't come from social media. We don't come from political noise. We don't come from the news. It was all quiet at one point. You know, everything was quiet at one point. There weren't cars, there weren't planes, there
Right.
weren't buses, right? It was just quiet.
Yeah.
And I think we re-energize ourselves in that quiet. And and I think that over the course of, they say, I think Herb Benson did a study in Boston a long time ago about meditation, and he said that meditation, 30 minutes of meditation is like 8 hours of sleep in terms of how it recharges, and I think that's true, but I think even more so because I think there's an immeasurable benefit to that quiet that we can't necessarily quantify,
Mm-hmm.
but it's there, right?
Yeah.
It becomes built in at some point. So
Yeah.
um,
I like that. I like that world of meditation too, though. It's just, I don't like, I think you use the word, you said fortitude, but it does, or you said fortify, didn't you?
fortitude, but
Fortitude,
fortifies, sure.
but it fortifies, yeah, fortifies just our humanness. Um, and I just think that we should, I mean, it's different for everybody, but I think it should be like a national day of meditation. I'm telling you.
Seriously. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it made me think of like when people talk about, let's have a moment of silence for a remembrance or something like that. I always think it's just not long enough. We gotta take a few moments of silence and many moments of silence. And sometimes I have to remind myself during the day because I'll get so hung up in what I'm engaged in. I'll forget to eat. I'll forget to, just sort of stop in the moment and listen to a bird or, something, right? Like that connects me back to life, and life is those things. I think I heard the little dog.
You did. I tried to.
That's cool.
I tried to.
That's all good, man.
I
It's all
tried
good.
to. Here she's. This is my little.
What's your name?
Chew.
Chew.
Yeah, it's Chewy, but I just call it Chew.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cute pup. We've got a couple of labs, and one is probably he was almost gone like a year and a half ago at Thanksgiving, and he's been around since. He made a miraculous comeback, and he's still hanging out. But
Oh, wow.
he's my boy. He's like my best friend,
Yeah.
and I feel like we already went through losing him because we were a day from putting him down, and because he'd stopped eating, he'd stopped drinking, and we'd spend all night with him out, just talking to him and thanking him and all that sort of stuff, my wife and I, and here he is, he's still hanging tough. So I guess we'll see how that goes. But such important relationships with wonderful creatures as dogs are. They're just indescribable.
They are. And it's so, as we're talking about dogs, like I had big dogs, so I like the big dogs. And so I always talk about friends of mine, especially male friends of mine that had small dogs. And I'll be like, why you got the little mini, whatever it was? And I didn't have the love for small dogs I had for bigger dogs. But she crept into my life, and I'm like, oh, she made me a little softer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I can understand, like, we're just so connected with, these animals that, my sister had one that kind of that passed away. And it was like a family dog, basically, but it was hers. And the pain that she felt when it passed away was like, it was strong. And but they're just beautiful animals for me.
Absolutely. You mentioned help us get softer, or help me get softer, and
it did.
Yeah, no, but I think that's the coolest thing, because I've been accused, in earlier times of my life, and I'm a pretty hard dude. And my I didn't know this until probably 6 months ago, but my name in Irish means oak tree.
Okay.
I don't want to be an oak tree, and a long time ago, decided, because it was some Eastern thought,
Mhm.
right? Like as I was looking at Buddhism and Taoism and just, discovering different of thinking or being or whatever it is. And they talked about, being like a reed as opposed to a tree, because a tree, when the big wind comes, will break,
Mhm.
and a reed will bend. And
Mhm.
and so that just hit me when you said that about softening, because it really is, one of the beautiful things in life for me is I've softened over time, and I don't look at it as a weakness like I
Right.
used to. I look at it as a triumph, because I've been able to soften.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's in that space, like there's an okayness to be vulnerable. So a level of vulnerability, because it for a creative like myself, it helps. It opens up different areas of my mind and my spirit to be a little softer, be a little bit more vulnerable. And I didn't know I didn't have it until she came around, and I was like, wait a minute, I guess I was kind of a hard guy to be around, just because, like, being driven and focused and all that kind of stuff, you know that was there, and it kind of allowed me to, well, it didn't allow me to, but what ended up happening is that, because I was so driven, so focused, that I wasn't thinking about, you know, the softer things of life. and
Right.
and she came along and kind of opened that up again.
It's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love it. I love to hear that.
yeah, yeah.
So, how do we find your work and your podcast and the things that you're doing out there? What's the best way to find L. Michael Burt?
Michael Burt, man. I got so much stuff out there, man. It's not even funny. The podcast, the ThriveWell Journey, on YouTube. We're still in development. Like I said, we're like 6 months old. So we're building a website. Go to YouTube, Spotify, all that good stuff. We're actually working on an app right now that talks about the pillars of life, financial, spiritual, mental, and physical. So that'll be coming out pretty soon, hopefully. And yeah, just the podcast is the best way right now, just to hang on and be part of the conversation.
Very cool. Yeah, your podcast is very memorable for me in terms of, being in it, being on it, talking to you, and just, there's a resonance, I think, between us that I think is really cool. I feel that. And seriously, man, we're like 2 hours away from each other. So I'm going to get down there someday
Yeah, man.
and come visit.
You would My nephew who just moved here, y'all be buddies, man, because y'all both like Detroit. I meant to say
Yeah.
something about that last time, and I see it, in your artwork, and also back there, I was like, he's a Detroit Lions fan. And my nephew, man, he's hardcore.
Cool. No,
Hardcore.
that's great. That's great. Well, it's not, the worst feeling in the world to being a Lions fan anymore, which is
Right.
right. Spectacular. So very, very, very happy about that.
Nice.
Um, Michael, I've enjoyed our time very, very much, and thank you for coming on. And I feel honored that this is the first time you being a guest on a podcast. I'm honored that it was my podcast. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, man. And I wasn't, again, first time, but I wasn't nervous at all because I have a familiarity with you. And I was, and who you showed up for me as, um, was very open, giving, and honest individual. So I already had that okayness of who I was going to be talking with. And so thank you for just being who you are. And and just inviting me and letting this be my first guest spot on the podcast. It was enriching, and probably if she didn't break things up, it probably would have gone deeper. But but thank you for actually allowing me to be here, and I really truly appreciate it.
Thank you. That I feel that, and I thank you for saying that. We'll talk soon. I'm sure we'll be communicating.
Oh yeah,
so we'll make sure that we do that. Thank you again.
absolutely. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed When I Stop Fighting the podcast, please check out my books and my journals on my website, DarylDittmer.com. Enjoy a 15% discount by using the code PODCAST, DARYLDITTMER.com. Thanks again.